While the concept of bonus or secret levels in games has been around for a long time, they're definitely not as prevalent these days as they used to be back before the turn of the century. Normally included simply as fun little extras to cap a game off, sometimes they're developed into more than just a play and put down level. One of the most successful in recent memory is undoubtedly Call of Duty Zombies mode, added in 2008's Call of Duty World at War. Initially just one level at the end of the campaign, it saw 1 to 4 players fight against unending waves of Nazi zombies. And now 10 years later, it's one of the headlining features of nearly every Call of Duty game. With its own deep lore and unique gameplay features, Zombies has almost become much of a core part of the Call of Duty experience as the always popular multiplayer. And even though Zombies became so popular, it wasn't the only time in the series' history that a bonus level has become a full-fledged mode in its own. Released 1 year before World at War, we received the genre-defining Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. Considered by many to be the best in the series and set a standard for all FPS games to come out after it. And like its yet to be released successor, it also included a reward to players that completed its campaign story and sat through the credits right until the end. The bonus mission Mile High Club was set mid-flight aboard a jet airliner and saw you and a squad of Task Force 141 members fighting aisle through aisle to rescue a VIP being held hostage. While normally over within minutes, players loved it due to its frantic pace and replayable nature, through its use of a timer and multiple difficulty settings. And it's this level that inspired the people at Infinity Ward to create a brand new mode for Modern Warfare's sequel, with the essence of Mile High Club's short and sweet yet endlessly engaging playability at its heart. In 2009, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 was released, and for its time it was the biggest entertainment launch in history. Its staggering popularity saw it sell around 5 million copies in its first 24 hours alone, and within 2 years the game has sold over 4 times that, with some estimates nearing as high as 30 million by the end of 2011. While there are clearly multiple factors that drove sales and excitement for Modern Warfare 2, such as a superb marketing campaign and unwavering support from its predecessor's dedicated fanbase, Modern Warfare 2's expanded range of included modes was certainly a decisive element that served to generate its monumental hype and further bolster its then record sales. With a continuation of the story through the campaign and evolution of Modern Warfare 1's already excellent multiplayer mode, which had already begun to define an entire generation of FPS games, the new addition of the Special Ops game mode built upon what made Mile High Club so great. Fast, exciting missions with solid replay value that put you right into the action, without the need to wait around for cutscenes or any background context, and you could even play with a friend. Initially pitched as a co-op portion of Modern Warfare 2's campaign, Special Ops, or Spec Ops for short, was eventually retooled into a full alternative game mode. It was able to be played solo, but was at its best with a friend. It featured 23 individual missions unrelated to one another, split into 5 categories of varying difficulty: Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, and Echo. A lot were scenarios and maps that had been pulled from the single player, presumably in order to help save on some development time, with most being from Modern Warfare 2 and a few being from the original Modern Warfare. Each were focused around completing varying tasks, often from getting one point to another, while others saw players hold off waves of enemies or disarm explosives before a timer ran out. Spec Ops had a ton of variety for players, with each mission feeling unique and each category differentiated in both difficulty and objectives. For example, the first category, Alpha, has simple missions that can be done quick without too much trouble, while Delta contrasts with long-form, more complicated scenarios that require more tactics than just wildly shooting at everything you see. Each mission has a choice of 3 difficulties, with each one earning 1, 2, or 3 stars, meaning there's a total of 69 stars to be collected over the 23 available scenarios. Doing so will net you an achievement on whatever system you're playing on, a coveted award for only the most persistent Spec Ops player. The missions in Spec Ops all feel as though the developers simply wanted to amalgamate all of the most enjoyable aspects of the game into the coolest scenarios that they could think of for 2 people to engage in, and in my opinion, they achieved this perfectly. When playing the game's campaign, you are often barraged by massive set pieces, explosions, and other Michael Bay-esque moments, which a lot of players criticise for it being too chaotic and too much of a departure from the style of previous COD games. But in Spec Ops, this action-oriented design worked great, as each mission is meant to deliver a frantic, bite-sized experience that places you right into the action, with no superfluous details. My personal favourite is Acceptable Losses. Set on a Russian military airbase while in a blizzard, the objective of planting multiple explosives in the facility without being spotted is really exciting. The low visibility makes it difficult to see enemies that aren't right in front of you, and vice versa, and sneaking through with silencers and heartbeat sensors makes some really tense moments. And while somewhat eclipsed by the hugely popular multiplayer mode, Special Ops was an excellent addition to Modern Warfare 2 and a satisfying value add to the product as a whole. The idea of small, explosive missions and their implementation as a co-op experience provided a popular addition to the series, and luckily for us, they weren't done with Spec Ops just yet. In every year since 2005's Call of Duty 2, a new entry had been added to the series' ever-growing repertoire, and 2011 was no different. 2 years and 2 days after the release of Modern Warfare 2, its direct sequel, Modern Warfare 3, was released, and was again the biggest entertainment launch in history at the time. While breaking the series' own records for sales numbers, many players would agree that it didn't quite match the first two Modern Warfares for overall quality. This was likely due in part to team fragmentation and staff departures in Infinity Ward, which required other studios to be brought in to help develop the project, but that's a different story for a different video. Nevertheless, Modern Warfare 3 still provided entertaining experiences all round, and people ate it up like they did every Call of Duty release around that time. As with all entries since COD 4, multiplayer was the headlining feature for Modern Warfare 3, as it draws in the most players by far and always manages to keep people around with its tight gunplay and satisfying unlock system. And sitting in the shadow of multiplayer was Spec Ops, back for round 2 with a laundry list of new missions, as well as an entirely new branch of the mode called Survival. Something to note here is that while they did make more missions available in the time after release, they were only available by buying the game's content packs, something I didn't choose to engage in. So we'll just be looking at what was offered on day 1. The mission portion of Modern Warfare 3 Spec Ops is expectedly pretty similar from what was offered in Modern Warfare 2, a bunch of scenarios split between different categories of varying difficulties. The main difference here is that while stars are still given for completing each scenario, new categories were unlocked through a ranking system, similar to what had been in multiplayer for years now. Separate from other modes, your Spec Ops rank unlocked new guns and gear for purchases in the game's new survival mode. Still under the Spec Ops banner, this mode, while somewhat unimaginative, was well suited to the Call of Duty formula and saw 1 or 2 players fight off waves of hostiles until they inevitably ran you over. Out of everything available in Call of Duty's second Special Ops offering, the survival mode stood out to be my favourite of the bunch. While the missions were certainly not terrible by any means, something about them just didn't stack up to what we got in Modern Warfare 2. I can't nail down why, but for some reason they just felt less exciting. Perhaps the novelty had begun to wear off, or maybe it's the fact that the missions seemed to be more based around events in the campaign and not just the maps. This meant their individuality felt a bit lacking, and it didn't give it as many reasons as Modern Warfare 2 to replay each Spec Ops mission, as a lot of it you'd already done in the campaign. Modern Warfare 3's troubled development undoubtedly led to some things being prioritised, and perhaps the mission design for Spec Ops was deemed not as critical as others, such as the essential multiplayer mode. Alas, we'll probably never know the true reasons or the full extent of the background turmoil during the game's development. It's a shame the missions offered in Modern Warfare 3 sometimes felt like a half-baked reiteration of things we'd seen before, rather than something fresh and innovative. I think it's for that reason I enjoy the new survival mode so much. Even though the idea had been done to death even in 2011, COD's quick and satisfying gunplay implemented in this mode proved to be a functional and enjoyable combination. The use of multiplayer features like purchasable kill streaks and upgradable weapons also made it a lot more replayable than one might expect, with a ton of maps and their varying difficulty really bulking out the experience further. All in all, Spec Ops in Modern Warfare 3 was a perfectly solid addition to the game, and while not nearly as popular as the multiplayer, it had garnered a respectable number of fans. Those that appreciated it in Modern Warfare 2 were overjoyed to see it return, and even though it wasn't as much of an innovative leap as its forerunner, it was well executed and mostly delivered on what fans expected and wanted from it, and there's no doubt that the game was better off for it. As the middle of 2012 drew ever closer, the Call of Duty marketing machine spun up once again, this time with Black Ops 2 being the one to break records left and right. Modern Warfare 3's primary life cycle was coming to an end, and it had a good run. With the last 2 Infinity Ward games in the series having the Spec Ops co-op mode, I was hopeful to see it return in future titles. At this point, Treyarch had taken a couple of cracks at its own Zombies mode, which ended up becoming extremely popular, and it seemed like every year we would get a new Call of Duty that was different in terms of the modes it offered. Treyarch would have Zombies, and Infinity Ward would have Spec Ops, which would help to differentiate each year's entry quite nicely. But that was not the case. Once Call of Duty Ghosts rolled around with its disappointing reception and lack of imagination in tow, seriously it was basically just COD slightly modern era warfare, it was clear Spec Ops was done. What was bundled was Extinction, another co-op mode that was basically the Zombies mode from Black Ops, except this time it was aliens. But at least they tried to make something different, because after that literally every COD game has had a Zombies mode. Advanced Warfare, Black Ops 3, Infinite Warfare, World War II, and now Black Ops 4. which also saw it seemingly consume its traditional campaign mode in the process. It's a shame that the developers of Call of Duty either aren't allowed or just don't make different modes anymore, because even the slightest success can lead to something massively popular in the future, such as the case of zombies. Spec Ops was my favourite addition to Call of Duty in the series' history, and I'm saddened it was never to be seen again after Modern Warfare 3. Though, if rumours about a hypothetical Modern Warfare 4 end up bearing fruit, which to be honest is anyone's guess at this point, I've got my fingers crossed that we might see a revival of Special Ops sometime in the future. Thanks for watching.